Hi everyone, this is Helen Zhen. I'm the Director of Events in HESA. It is my great honor to welcome Dr. Cynthia Meyersburg to join us. Dr. Meyersburg, or who was affectionately referred to as Dr. M, is the lecturer in Extension School for the Harvard Division of Continuing Education, as well as a research associate with the McNally Lab in the Harvard University Psychology Department. She completed her PhD in psychology at Harvard University in 2010. Her dissertation investigated research questions regarding past life memory phenomena, including why do some people believe they have memories from past lives, who believes this, and what are the correlates and consequences of this belief. Dr. M has been interviewed regarding her dissertation research by Big Picture Science, also has been consultant and been a panelist for an episode of the Discovery Channel's Curiosity series. If I'm not mistaken, that for the nerdies like me, that was hosted by the famous Captain Kirk. So just to have that in your mind for a while. She is a collaborator for the International Association for Applied Psychology's Task Force on Terrorism and Peace Building. In 2022, Dr. M was recognized as by the Harvard Extension Student Association Spirit Award for the Best Mentor, and she got the same award the next year in 2023. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. M to present her new active learning weekend in loss and legacy.
Helen, thank you for that lovely, lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm here to tell you about the Loss and Legacy Active Learning Weekend. So okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move your pictures so I don't see you, so I'm not so distracted. There we go. All right. So grief is ubiquitous. Yet in many cultures, this aspect of human experience is taboo to discuss, and scientific research into understanding grief is relatively recent as a scientific endeavor. So we focus in this class on meaning-making, creative activities, and on addressing collective grief. Weather permitting, we will take a guided tour and explore the historical and innovative Mount Auburn Cemetery, and students will learn about ethical wills and legacy writing and begin creating their own legacy writing. So the fine print, you must either be currently or previously enrolled in my grief class, which is Psych E 1017, or if you've completed it, you need to have had a B- or higher, and students should bring a laptop with them when they come to campus for the class. Students may not take both Psych E 1017W, which was offered previously, and Psych E 1028 for degree or certificate credit. And if you are on the waiting list, most importantly, if you happen to be on the waiting list for my grief class, which is currently full, I believe, and you want to be able to enroll both in grief and in loss and legacy, please just contact me, send me an email. I currently still have spaces in this active learning weekend, so if you like what you hear and you're interested, there's room for you. Okay, so what are the questions we're going to grapple with? So how can we address collective grief? How do we remember others? And how do we ourselves want to be remembered? So I'll come back to all of those in a moment, but first people want to know format, I'm sure. So it's a 2-credit course that will include an on-campus, in-person active learning weekend. So we'll meet on Friday, October 6th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. On Saturday, October 7th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And don't worry, there will be a substantial lunch break, so you will get to eat in there. And on October 8th, we'll meet from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I'm trying to arrange something special for that. We'll see. I'm very excited about it. So what's the thing you have to produce at the end? It's going to be a piece of legacy writing or an ethical will. And that won't be due until October 23rd. So it's not a strictly speaking academic paper. So the frequently asked questions I anticipate getting are, is attendance mandatory? Yes, you are required to attend Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in order to receive credit. Does participation count? Yes, it does. It's 25% of the grade, so please be ready to participate, show up and talk and participate. That already gets you 25% of the points. Is there going to be a quiz or an exam? Some of my classes, I do have exams, but I think in particular, for this sort of a class, that's not what I'm aiming at. So no, there's not going to be any sort of a quiz or an exam. But will there be a paper? Yes, but it's not going to be, strictly speaking, academic paper. It will be a piece of legacy writing, which can also be referred to as an ethical will. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it's a project that students generally really enjoy doing and find exciting and meaningful and very personal and useful. So, all right. So I talk about addressing collective grief, but you might be wondering what I mean by collective grief. So when there are losses that impact a community, a country, or the world, when these occur, they can lead to a shared yet unique set of experiences of grief. So we all grieved when different events have happened, and we each did it in our own way, yet in the context of grieving with others. These can be events such as the 1955 murder of Emmett Till or the 2020 murder of George Floyd. The losses can be caused by events such as natural disasters, like the fires in Maui, pandemics, like the COVID one we've experienced, all of us, or what our great-grandparents might have experienced, or the Spanish influenza of 1918, 1919. Losses can be caused by hate crimes, wars, genocides, ethnicides. Collective grief can occur in response to losses such as the death of a beloved leader or valued community member. In some instances in which a wrong has caused the collective grief, restorative justice is possible. So that's where whoever is at fault, if there is someone at fault, takes responsibility and works to make it right. But in many instances, restorative justice is just not a possibility. Maybe the perpetrator or perpetrators are not sorry. Maybe they're dead. Maybe they don't have the power to do anything about it. And what do we do then? So people may take action to attempt to protect against further or future harms. One productive way of addressing collective grief is to find a way to protect, repair, or heal whatever there is that remains that can be protected, repaired, or healed. So to address this, I am very excited to say I'm going to be able to have guest speaker, Amy Deegan. She's a co-founder of the Białystok Cemetery Restoration Project in Białystok, Poland. She is a noted Holocaust educator. She's been recognized by Yad Vashem in Israel, and her cemetery restoration project is a 501c nonprofit organization. I've got the link up there if you are interested and will learn more. And her work, she's pictured there with her husband, who's also one of the co-founders. There are 4 co-founders. They've been covered for their efforts in the Boston Globe as well as in other media outlets. And she's going to come in and bring some things that she's going to give an amazing presentation. And well, not about her, but about the project, the cemetery restoration. I've got a link here so that you can watch the video about it. So the next question was, how do we remember others? So weather permitting, we will have a guided tour of historic Mount Auburn Cemetery. Last year we had gorgeous weather, and we're going to have an amazing tour again this year. It's a very interesting place. Mount Auburn Cemetery has a really important mission, vision, and set of values. So Mount Auburn Cemetery, this is from their website, inspires all who visit, comforts the bereaved, and commemorates the dead in a landscape of exceptional beauty. We envision a world that it celebrates life's seasons, preserves natural beauty, and remembers human stories. Our values define our beliefs and commitments. They are guideposts for our daily work and our future plans. Every day, we seek to embody them in our relationships with visitors, families, neighboring communities, and our own staff. And those values are openness and welcome. Everyone's welcome there. Compassion and dignity, beauty and serenity, stewardship and sustainability and integrity and balance. And just to give you a little taste, here's some images, old and new, of Mount Auburn Cemetery from their website. There's plenty more there if you'd like to see it. But this gives you an idea of the place we will be visiting. And if you're curious what this one is, that's actually a stereopticon view, so people can see it in 3D. It's like a viewfinder for those of you who remember those. Okay. So how do we remember others? If you're interested in learning more about Mount Auburn Cemetery, you can certainly go there on your own as well. I've got the link for you. But I would say the best way to do this is enroll in Loss and Legacy Active Learning Weekend and take the special tour that is designed expressly for our class. So that brings me to a question that I think is one we all need to think about, which is, how do we want to be remembered? So part of the course will begin the work of putting together our own legacy writing, our ethical wills. And your legacy writing assignment, as I mentioned, is due on October 23rd if you take the class. So what do I mean by that? What is an ethical will? What is your legacy? So in a legal will, you leave your possessions. In an ethical will, you leave your values, your love, your feelings, and your whys. Why you did the things you did, what mattered to you and why. It's a way to share your wishes and hopes for those you love. For this assignment, you will take time to reflect. To whom do you want to address your legacy writing? Are there stories or memories you want to make sure are preserved? What's important to you to preserve? What is important for you to share? And people do these in different ways. So I had one student who it was very important to her to put together recipes from a family member that were special recipes that her family had brought with them when immigrating to this country. It was important to her in terms of tradition. I've had other people put in other sorts of things, but it's what's personally meaningful to you. So if you're interested in this, all my students will watch this over the weekend when they're with me. It's a really wonderful but brief TED Talk, but just in case you would like to watch it in anticipation, or if you can't make it, it's Scott Zucker's TED Talk. He's an author, he's a novelist, but he also gave an amazing TED Talk about the importance of ethical wills and legacy writing. And I think it's just an amazing talk. So I'm going to put the link in there and I will share these slides. Okay, and you don't need to see my bio because Helen gave me a gorgeous introduction. A couple last things I'd like to tell you is that when I teach classes, I work very hard to make them welcoming communities. It's very important to me that my students collaborate with each other and aren't in competition with each other. So one of the best things about taking this sort of a course is not only do you get to come to campus, but you get to make friends. It's a really wonderful way to connect with other people who share your interests in learning and growing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. M. And as a former student, who has taken multiple classes from her, I can testify that the student community is one of the best thing ever happened to me during my whole experience at Harvard Extension School. And I will open the floor to all the participants here for any questions. Okay, I will throw some of mine. So, Dr. M, what do you think will be their number if there is only one takeaway the students are going to get from this active learning weekend? What will be your number one takeaway for the students?
That's hard. Well, it's in the context of the grief course. So I would say the overarching message of that is that grief is the cost of love, and it's worth it. It's inevitable. We're all going to feel it, but it's the cost of loving others, and that's okay.
I personally have never taken your grief class, but based on what I heard, it was a very supportive community that you have built in your classroom, and Yeah, and from what I heard, it's something I deep is like not deep enough for that for that expression, but that is the only word I can think of right now. It's a difficult, challenging time for the people who going through it. I have heard students asking for support after taking an like they already have the support in the grief class, but they still continues to seek support when going through those difficult time.
So people come to the class for a variety of reasons. So sometimes I have a student who says, well, I haven't really had any major losses yet, and I want to make sure I'm prepared, or I want to make sure I'm prepared as a clinician for how to think about grief. And I know I'm going to encounter this when I work as a clinician later. But more often, I have students come who are contending with something. So it's not that the grief class makes them need support, but sometimes it makes people realize that they do need support, that it is okay to look for support, and that support is important, and that that's a worthwhile thing to seek. I frequently have people who've lost partners, children, parents, siblings, and are contending with grief. And there's also more ambiguous forms of grief. So people might grieve over a divorce or other sorts of losses that are not deaths, but they're still losses. And so students come, and they don't come empty-handed to grief. They come with something already that they're carrying, and that they are unpacking and contending with. I work hard to put together a class that is comfortable and has a wide variety of perspectives, so that it isn't all research articles. There are research articles, but isn't all research articles. And what research articles aren't all about North America. So I try very hard to have it be something that's richer than that, that's more multifaceted. So I don't know if that answers the question, but if people are looking for support, they didn't come to the class empty-handed to begin with. Yeah.
We have one question from the chat. It looks like Leanne asked, if you haven't taken grief, are you still able to take the active learning weekend?
So you would need to take in the context of also being enrolled. If you haven't already taken grief, you would need to enroll in grief to be able to do it. I will tell you, I think grief might be my best class. I mean, I really think all my classes are going to try really hard to make them good classes, but grief is the one that I get, people calling me or texting me a year later saying, oh, wow, this thing we learned turned out to be really helpful when. So yes, you would have to take grief. But if you want to take grief, I know grief's full, but if you want to take grief and be able to take the weekend, I know you, Leanne, but anyone else who's listening as well, if you would like to be able to do both, I will let you in off of the wait list for grief if you want to be able to register for this. I'd be happy to.
Dr. Meyersburg, I have a question. I'm just wondering, so I find the prospect of taking a class like grief and spending a semester thinking about and being immersed in the idea of grief daunting. And as somebody who's dealt with loss, it's very unpleasant. And so I just wonder, from a protecting your own mental health perspective, how would you advise that people approach this class, and what I guess what circumstances are appropriate to take it or not, as the case may be?
Okay. All right. So first of all, I think there are a couple of people in this room who have taken the class. If so, would anybody be willing to maybe unmute and say what you think, and then I'll add what I think? Anyone who's taken it want to say something? I know there are a couple of you in here. Yes, Tim.
Hi, sorry, my camera's not working. I don't know why. But yeah, I had taken the class about a year ago. It was actually my very first class at Harvard Extension. And I came specifically for that, and it's why I'm staying at Harvard. And so to your point, I couldn't see who was talking, so I don't know who I'm addressing. But you're right. It's tough. But here's the thing: is you stare it down in the face, and you take that power, all that fear that you have, and your concern. It's like you take control of it. You really disarm it, and you look at it from so many perspectives, and from so many cultures, and from and it through stories and traditions and cultures and science, and it is as heavy of a subject that it is. You take control. You take all that. You really take the power in your own hands. And so everything that you're considering like a fear and discomfort becomes empowering and it right, and it changes everything. It changes your relationship with life and death, which is something that we all need. And like it really is life changing. And so it's hard and it's heavy, but I will tell you, it's one of the most nurturing environments. It's one of the safest environments that you will ever have the opportunity to confront the topic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that's what I want people to have. I think you're going to experience grief in life, regardless of whether you do something to prepare for it or not. And to have tools at hand when you need them, and to have tools and ways of understanding and thinking about it that help you lead your life in the way you want to lead it, and contend with grief in the way in which you want to contend with it. I think it's very valuable. It's a really exciting class. I work hard to make sure that there's a diversity of opinions and also voices. So for instance, I'm still working on lining up my last guest speaker, but so far for this term, I've got lined up a clergy panel where there will be perspectives from at least 3 different faiths. I have someone coming in who works for New England Donor Society, so organ donation. We've got someone coming to speak about hospice, and I have a world-renowned Egyptologist coming to talk about ancient Egyptian perspectives on death and dying and grief. I'm really excited about what students will get this term, and I think it'll be a really amazing class for the students. I've worked very hard on it. My TAs have worked very hard on it. We're excited.
So that comes to my next question. What advice you will give students to succeed in your class?
Do the reading and show up. That's do the reading and show up. It's hard reading. There's a lot of it, but in return, this is such a challenging topic and such a challenging material. I try to take some of the academic stress off of it. So there's no exam. Instead, I have students work on weekly response papers to the readings, in which you just demonstrate that you read it and thought about it, and respond to the way that makes sense for you. And then you put an introduction and a conclusion on it. And that's the main deliverable for the class. There's also a presentation where you choose a topic if you're a graduate student. Yeah, so there's a presentation where you get to choose the topic. I've had people do things like jazz funerals and Day of the Dead, but whatever topic in grief, water cremation, anything like that would be a good topic. Being ghosted, all sorts of interesting topics you could choose. Yeah, any of those would be great. But you choose something you're interested in and put together a presentation with some academic sources, and you participate. And so it's a very rigorous course in terms of it's a lot of content, and it's really good content. And I spend a lot of time curating it I start with a huge set of readings, and really chose what I thought were the absolute best of the best for the grief class. And the active learning weekend doesn't have a pile of readings, but the grief class itself does. But those readings are all there for everyone's there for a reason. They're there to give a variety of perspectives. Students read about 2,000-year-old pet cemetery. Students read about shrines, using digital shrines for uploading digital shrines. Students read about perspectives of Indonesian women who were widowed due to HIV, read about the role of the Akan women of Ghana and the grieving rituals there. I mean, it's just a really rich and interesting set of readings. Some of them academic, some of them not, but all of them really powerful and really useful and really meaningful. So it's everything I wish I'd had in advance of the first time I encountered grief in a major way. And it's what I hope will be useful as a toolbox for my students.
So along that line, what are the readings or what are the things to read or to watch you would recommend in the topic of grief, and or for those who are taking the active learning week, as well as like in general, what are the other things you would recommend?
So for the grief class, I recommend Lucy Hone's, well, I don't recommend, I require a few books. So we read an excerpt from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust, but his wife, most of his family, they did not. And he writes about, what do we do when we can't change a situation? In that case, we're challenged to change ourselves in some way. So I have students read an excerpt from that. We look at Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying. There isn't good support for the stages theory, but in terms of for people who are grieving, but there's still a real reason to read it. She's the classic person to read, and she really started the conversation, particularly in the United States, but she started the conversation on giving grief the serious attention it merits. Because it was so taboo, it wasn't really studied in a meaningful way until relatively recently. I also have students read When Bad Things Happen to Good People by the late Lawrence Kushner, and he writes about by the late Harold Kushner. Whoops, sorry, swap my Kushners on you. By the late Rabbi Kushner, he writes about having the experiences he had as a rabbi and as a parent, having a child who died from progeria, which is accelerated aging. It's very rare. So it's a really powerful book. And finally, I have students read Lucy Hone's Resilient Grieving. It's a really excellent book with very practical, helpful things like what do you do to get control when all of a sudden the world's been the rug's been pulled out from under you and your world's tumbling. What do you do to get control? How can you grieve in ways that help you be able to grieve and also still be able to move forward? In the class, we also talk about post-traumatic growth and that most of the time, actually, when we grieve, most of us are okay and don't need help, but about 1 in 5 people do, and that's okay too. So, but I don't know. Those are the ones. If you're asking me what my absolute favorite reading from the class is, didn't put it in the first time I taught it, but I put it in the second. I think I'll keep it. There's this letter that was written by the late Nobel laureate Richard Feynman to he married his high school sweetheart, and she died. I think she was maybe 20 when she died, something like she was very young. She had TB. It was tragedy. And a letter he wrote her after she died. Then it's really beautiful. Anyhow, those are some things to read. I don't know that I have a recommendation for what to watch, but I'd be interested to hear what some of the students want to put up in chat about what they think is meaningful to read or watch about grief that maybe I didn't think of. Oh, that's not true. I do have my students watch the movie Coco.
Oh,
yeah. How do we talk with children about grief? And also, I think it's a really interesting way to get a conversation going in a less threatening way.
And forgive my pronunciation. Deepika is asking what is the best way to reach you.
So the best way to reach me, it will be on the slides that get posted. I'll make sure it's there. But cynthia.meyersburg@gmail.com. And I will also put it in the chat for you so you don't have to wait for the slides to post. Just one moment. Oh, I love the wind phone. Yeah, I agree with Tim. That is another of my favorites. They're all my favorites. Everything on that syllabus is my favorite. I took a huge bunch of things and I narrowed it down to my very favorite ones. So there you go, everyone. Now you've got my email address and you can reach me if you need me. Does anybody have any other questions for me or comments? It's nice to see some familiar names here.
Yeah. Also, is there anyone wants to say anything? I hear a sound here.
No, I just unmuted because I just wanted to say, Dr. Meyersburg, thank you so much for your time again. I always take so much out of your professor spotlights and really appreciate the time that you take for us. So thank you.
Oh, my joy. Thank you for having me. I hope I'll see some of you in the active learning weekend and in my grief course.
Yeah, and also please everyone keep an eye out for the new courses Dr. M is teaching this semester and next. So for the fall semester, she is teaching the new course History and System of Psychology, and in the spring semester, she's going to teach the new course The Meaning in Life, which I personally am very excited about, and also schizophrenia as an active learning weekend, along with her normal of quote unquote offering of Proseminar in the fall and motivation in spring. As I just like double confirm you're still teaching applied clinical psychology in the J term, I hope.
No, actually, I'm going to teach my pseudoscience class in the J term, and I'm going to teach applied clinical psychology as a full semester course this time. So I'm switching it up, but I'm very excited for it. And this time I'm going to do J term online, which means that you don't have to hop on a plane if you're not near Boston. You don't have to hop in a car, plane, a boat, whatever to get here. You just have to turn on your computer, and I'll be teaching about pseudoscience. And I'm really excited about the pseudoscience class.
Okay, if there's no more questions or comments from the participants, thank you very much, Dr. M. We do hope to see you back next semester very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Everybody have a nice day and or good night, well, depending on wherever you are. Have a good one, everybody.